How's it going, everybody? Welcome in to another episode of the Mavs Step Back Podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Trigg. I'm here yet again with our official Mavs Step Back correspondent, Grant Afseth. He also does a lot of great work over at DallasBasketball.com. He is at all of these games. He is on the ground there, getting a bunch of good information and writing about it and publishing it there. You can go check out his work over at DallasBasketball.com, or you can find him on Twitter at Grant Afseth. He also has his own YouTube channel at Grant Afseth. Be sure to go check him out over there. He's always posting all of these post-game and, occasionally pre-game things that the Mavs are doing. So very interesting stuff over there. Go check it out. You can find myself on Twitter at Dalton_Trigg. And the Dallas Mavericks are, I don't know, they have a couple of losses that start to make you think, well, is this going to fall apart like it has in the last, couple of years as far as the start of the season goes? Or, are they going to be able to bounce back from it? And the latest answer is they're going to bounce back from it because, we were at those games in New Orleans. The first one was a blowout win. We thought, okay, well, they should be able to take care of business in that second one. But the Pelicans got Herb Jones back, and they were playing on that monstrosity of an in-season tournament court that Luka had some interesting things to say about after the game. And so they ended up getting their butts kicked in that game. It was a complete opposite of what happened in the first New Orleans game. And so then they don't have much time to think about it because that game started at 7 p.m. on Tuesday, and then they had to fly to D.C., and you have a 6 p.m. tip-off time against the Wizards, who have won four consecutive games against the Mavs dating back to 2021. So you're thinking, okay, the odds are stacked against them. Kyrie's out. They're on the second night of a back-to-back, third game in 4 nights, and then they come out and put up 130 points on the Wizards and get the win to go back into the win column, and they're 9-3 now. And Luka, he didn't have a great game by his standards coming off of, it was a lot better than the worst performance of maybe his career on Tuesday night. But, he had 26 points in 32 minutes, 10 assists. But Dereck Lively specifically, his chemistry with Dereck Lively was something that really, showed on Wednesday night in D.C., and, Tim Hardaway Jr., all respect to him coming off the bench, leading the team with 31 points. But in my opinion, the biggest takeaway from the Mavs 130-117 win over the Wizards is what Luka and D-Live were able to do. And Lively, he ended up with a career-high 17 points, had 9 rebounds to go along with it, 2 blocks. Even though he only had 2 blocks, he was still affecting shots that weren't counted as blocks. He was just all over the place. He completely locked down the Wizards, especially early on, and it gave the Mavs an edge for the night. So what are your thoughts on that? Is that your biggest takeaway? Because out of all the things that happened, that was the thing I looked at, and I was like, man, this is really cool. This is something that they can build on going forward, and it should continue to get better as the season goes on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when you look at the Mavericks overall this season, the big thing will be Dereck Lively's development. I think you saw all the points that you made kind of feed into the whole fact of, being a team that's coming off a 38-44 season, you have to find ways to raise your floor as a group. And the floor should be, winning games against teams like the Wizards, even if it's the second night of a back-to-back. And one of the ways to do that is to have a rim protector who's deterring, a lot of shots at the rim, who's kind of blowing up different half-court actions like Dereck Lively did last night, and then also being a really efficient finisher. Those are just great ways to be a consistent team on both ends, having that as a weapon. And I think he just showed a lot of different ways that he can punish, a team like the Wizards. Well, just in general, but, particularly those sort of bottom barrel teams where, you can kind of get in, get out and expect consistency. And I thought there's kind of a game within the game for involving Lively in the offense right now, where the last couple games, the opponent has tried to put a wing on Dereck Lively to start out. So then there's when he's setting the screen for Luka, they have a wing switching onto Luka, and the big is kind of like sagging off or pre-rotating off of Derrick Jones. So what I thought was interesting in general is just like the passing ability that you see from Lively and the ability to kind of make the slip out of screening actions and then just be a threat, along the baseline in the dunker spot. All those things have the necessary skills to kind of break what the defense is trying to do. So they were disrupted in New Orleans by Herb Jones playing that role, but then they saw it again, in Washington. They handled it well where, they just were mismatch hunting, with Luka, getting all those ball screens. And then, they kind of started to break it with Grant Williams being that relief option as the screener and then finding Lively along the baseline. And then, just the third quarter where they really had that hot stretch where, Luka and Lively were really playing out of pick and roll. I think the Wizards kind of just reverted back to a traditional pick and roll coverage because their other strategies were getting broken. And that's a sign of a really impressive foundation is when another team can throw out multiple different strategies at you. You can hurt their weaknesses, and then you kind of revert them back to playing traditional coverages. And they just basically ate them alive with, Lively and Luka playing out of what they do best, which is just normal pick and roll. So I think overall, when you feed all that into it itself, as well as like the rim protection, paint protection stuff, that's just the making of a very impressive foundation for a team. When you have a talent like Luka and a rim protector and a paint finisher, like Dereck Lively.
It's really incredible to watch it happen in real time because, out of all the people, including Lively himself, we talked to him over the summer, had Texas Legends head coach and Mavs player development coach, Jordan Sears on here. He talked about it. Grant Williams has come on here and talked about, we've had everybody we talk to and we ask about Lively. It's the same thing. They talk about how his basketball IQ is so high and how even if he makes mistakes, he pays attention to that and he learns very quickly. Like he very rarely makes the same mistake twice. And it's really incredible to watch that, happen over the first 12 games of this season because he really is getting better in real time and he's learning from his mistakes. And I just can't wait to see what he looks like, toward the end of the season when it's getting close to playoff time. Because it's even like his free throws, his free throws were kind of shaky at first, but then like these last couple of games, he's been really solid there. He's just put more arc under it. It looks really good. So everything about Dereck Lively has impressed me, and he is. I already had high expectations just because of the fact Luka has never played with a center with the physical attributes that Lively has, and the IQ and the hands and all that stuff. So, but he's exceeded my expectations. He's just been great. He's been something the Mavs haven't had since Tyson Chandler, and I know that's almost cliche to say at this point because it's been used so much, but it's true. They really have not had a guy like him since Tyson Chandler, and you can tell that Tyson has his fingerprints on this to some degree. He is working with Lively, and that is showing through Lively's play. Lively is taking it in. He's being a sponge, and he's applying that to these games, and it's really helping the Mavs, even when he's not having a huge performance. Like he had the career high 17 points last night. He's still affecting the game in other ways, and that's what you like to see. The only games where he hasn't really been great, so to speak, are games where he's gotten into foul trouble. But if he can stay out of foul trouble and he stays out there on the floor, the Mavs are going to be a very tough team to beat. They've already shown that. Another guy on here, and we'll swing back to Luka and Lively here before we take off. But another Dereck Jones Jr., he continues to play well in that Mavs starting 3 spot. He had another 20-point performance last night. Fun fact, it was his second 20-point performance of the season. So second 20-point game in 12 games. Before this season, throughout his entire career, 7-year career, he only had 2 20-point games. So he has matched that in 12 games for the Mavs. What can you tell us about, Dereck Jones Jr. and, how his confidence maybe his confidence was always there, but maybe he has more of an opportunity now than he had in previous stops in his career. And obviously playing with Luka and Kyrie helps. But, I mean, what specifically has led to this Derrick Jones Jr. renaissance, so to speak?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of everything that you said. I actually asked Dereck Jones before the regular season even started about his shooting, since I kind of figured his ability to make open shots would be such an important part of how opposing teams game plan for the Mavs, which we're already seeing the last couple games. Those like first 10 games kind of set in, and then teams really start to pick their poison. And with the Mavs offense, it's going to be at least in the short term, which probably will be the same regardless. But going forward, but Dereck Jones' ability to knock down those open shots. They don't want to have Luka playing out of pick and roll. They don't want to have Lively catching lobs. Those are the most dangerous parts of their offense. They don't want Kyrie to get easy, matchups and attacking, weaker defenders. So the easiest thing is to kind of pre-rotate off of Dereck Jones. And so the situation is set up for him, if he's aggressive and he's confident in his shot and he's consistent in his shot, to have a lot of opportunities for open looks, but then also to have like redriving opportunities, because even if they try to pack the paint as a defense, the Mavericks have enough talent to where they're going to at least still create, out of rotation opportunities, on like kick out passes and things like that for someone like, Dereck Jones to attack, kind of off the catch and redrive it. And he has some opportunities where he's had those chances, a defender's on their heels and he's playing through contact and finishing, or at least getting to the free throw line. And, with the emphasis of playing faster, he's a big reason for it, because he's so fast. They like to, make those throw ahead passes. And they've even had him get into opportunities where he's like initiating possessions, bringing the ball up the floor, and then getting into some actions as well. And overall, just when you're a very athletic player like him and have the size, like height wise and the length, there's a lot of opportunities for him to kind of be that relief option, like weak side, like kind of cutter as well. And so there's just a lot of pieces that kind of pool together to be, have those nights where if his shot's falling and the defense doesn't deviate from their strategy of basically picking him as their poison that they're okay to live with as a play finisher, then, he's going to have some big scoring performances and more than he's probably ever had, especially with the amount of minutes that he's playing. So it's, as long as he continues to make the defense pay, that's definitely going to be a big factor for the Mavericks offense for sure.
He's certainly been one of the more cost-efficient signings of the a 1-year vet minimum deal, and he's playing this big of a role for the Mavs. I mean, Mark Cuban's got to be smiling ear to ear, over that. So he's been great. And I mean, look, I honestly didn't know until closer to the season started, because I didn't really pay attention. It seems like Dereck Jones Jr. has been around forever, but he's only 26 years old. I mean, he's still, he's in the prime of his career, so maybe he can continue to give this type of effort for a full season. And if he does, the Mavs are going to be a tough team. They're going to be a tough out come playoff time. So I still think they need some depth. I mean, especially if you're not going to get consistent, good consistent production from Josh Green. If the Mavs are already, they could use some more size on the wing, in my opinion, but I don't think they can lack the size and have guys like Green, giving inconsistent performance. Like last night, for example, he put up a goose egg in that game, and it obviously didn't matter. But, I just I do kind of worry about that with the Mavs as this season progresses. Like, do they need to make a move to bolster that? Or maybe you try and make a play for OG Anunoby, who could potentially enter free agency this coming summer. He has a player option. If you do something like that, maybe you start him and then move Dereck Jones off the bench, and maybe Josh Green is part of that. But anyway, that's going down a rabbit hole there. We won't get into all that. Like I said, Tim Hardaway Jr., he had 31 points off the bench, continues his sixth man. I mean, in my opinion, I think he's leading the sixth man of the year race right now. He was a team high plus 17, and he did it in 27 minutes, 31 points in 27 minutes. And he shot 11 of 20 and 7 of 11 from the 3-point line. And he talked about after the game how, this higher pace that the Mavs are playing benefits him specifically as well as the team, but him specifically because it's really the first time he's played like this, he said, since his Atlanta days when he was with Dennis Schroeder. So, I mean, what have you seen specifically from Hardaway that has, gotten him into this groove that we've seen? Because somebody posted, I forgot where I saw this on Twitter, but you can fact check it if you want to. But somebody posted that ever since the Kyrie trade last year, Tim Hardaway Jr. is shooting over 44% from three. So, I mean, that's crazy. And I mean, that Kyrie didn't play last night. So, I mean, that it didn't really matter. But just in general, since that trade, he's been lights out and he's been living up to this contract that the Mavs gave him. So, I mean, what specifically have you seen that has led to this kind of production from Hardaway? Not just the scoring, but, with his rebounding and other things as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think a big part of it is he's entering the season after having a healthy off season to actually like work on his game as opposed to, really working his way back into form physically. That's something that he mentioned before the season started. And, I actually remember asking him about that second unit last year. I think it was after like that Suns game where they, lost, like Luka missed that like point blank finish like at the very end of the game. And, he mentioned like having Kyrie kind of running that bench unit. They play faster. It, creates opportunities for him to, really get like catch and shoot looks up, their quality looks. And then, they've kind of built it on that after, having a full training camp together. And I think a big, element of it is they're also getting into things in the half court pretty quickly as well. Like they're in some like read and react sort of actions, like whether it's like the, the zoom action where it's like he's in the corner starting out, gets the off ball screen into a handoff and he's able to attack downhill. Having, a player like Dereck Lively in those actions as well, the defense has to respect, the threat of the big, like going downhill on the roll a little bit more as well too this season with how efficient he's been. So that opens up things as well. But also just overall, like whether it's like in the story I wrote on DallasBasketball.com, there's other things that he's always done well. Like he's come off of off-ball screening actions well, like, double wide pin downs where they're setting, two off-ball screens out of the corner for him to come up and get the ball. Like those types of things add up where he's able to kind of quickly get opportunities, stay involved in the offense and be aggressive where the action is meant for him to be aggressive. And in general, beyond that, there's been opportunities where he's, with his rebounding, as you said, he's made an emphasis to help on the boards with how bad the team has been rebounding wise. Like they were 30th in total rebounding percentage last year. And beyond that, he's also taken those opportunities where he's grab and go, like a grab and go rebound, where he's getting the defensive board and pushing it himself on the break. And if there's a good look for him there, he's taking it. But I think where that healthy offseason's really paid off for him is he's getting to the rim more in those situations as well. And he really struggled early on last year with his percentages on drives. Like he was among like the league worst, like bottom 5 on like decent volume for a lot of last season. I remember posting that and kind of tracking that. And that really limits, when you also don't have too many like threats that are consistent. You kind of mentioned like the Josh Green element of it. You really need like that third or fourth perimeter player to really be able to make plays out of those actions. And, Tim Hardaway's been the only one on a like very consistent basis to be able to do that so far. And I think a lot of it is health, the play style, and, just continuing to have consistency in all of that has gone a long way for him. And when there's nights when Kyrie or someone like that is out, he's only involved even more in those situations. And like, for example, last night, I think he scored 13 of his points in transition. Like that's a testament to playing faster, and the team ranks 5th in pace overall this season now after, accounting for last night's game. And, there's just a lot of things that kind of feed into the way he ideally would play if he was having the perfect circumstances. And I think it's all lining up well for him.
And you mentioned Kyrie too. He missed last night. I believe that was his 3rd game he's missed so far this season since he had that foot sprain against the Brooklyn Nets in the 2nd game of the year. Look, I don't think it's something too serious with Kyrie, but like Jason Kidd said, they're not taking any chances with it. And I feel like this is something that we're probably going to be seeing a good bit of throughout the year. He'll play a handful of games, and then every now and then he's going to take one or two off just for, really pain tolerance management is my opinion on it. But what can you tell us about Kyrie Irving and his injury? Have there been any other updates? Do you think this is something, potentially serious, or you think it's just kind of, they're just keeping an eye on it and they want him to be fresh come the end of the season?
Yeah, I think in general it's something that he's still managing. I think when you have the same designation as you had for something that was a 2-game absence, and then it kind of flares up a little bit more later on, I think that's definitely something to at least keep an eye on. But I do think with the second out of a back to back, with like nothing in terms of like sneaky strategies or anything, but you do have to have injury designations to have players like cleanly sit on the second out of the back to back if they're an all-star and all that stuff because of the new rules. So I'm not saying they're like making up an injury or anything, because obviously he's still maintaining something. But it's like, like that's definitely something that's got to be listed, and that could be utilized in order to kind of have that general maintenance throughout a full season. But I do think with the way he's talked about it, it's something that he is managing. We'll probably have more like tangible updates a little bit closer to that Bucks game, because they have a complete day off today, and then they may have like a practice with media availability tomorrow in Washington with the opportunity to provide an update. But definitely before that Bucks game, I would expect to hear more. And it'll be interesting to see how they manage it with the back-to-backs, because they're going to flow right into another back-to-back. It's a very weird kind of schedule distribution where they have like 2 full days off and then just goes right into a back-to-back. And then they have, I believe they have another set of 2 days off after the back-to-back before they play in LA. So it's just been a weird situation overall with that, with the schedule management. But I do think it's something to keep an eye on, and we'll have a lot of updates on it on DallasBasketball.com for sure. But I do think last year he also had some issues with the plantar fasciitis that he played through, and there were times when he didn't play through it because he had to maintain it, or injury maintenance, if you will, by getting it right with the rehab process and everything. So I think that's probably similar to what is the foot sprain is, because that's being listed with a foot sprain and missing just a few games. Like, to me, that sounds like, I'm no medical expert by any means, obviously, but like that sounds like a thing that's a little longer than 2-game absence. So I think he's probably trying to power through it, play as many games as he can, but within reason, because as he says, you want to peak at the right time. That's a big goal that he has this season. So it's kind of finding that fine balance of not overexerting early on in the season, as you say as well. Having the fresh physical circumstances closer to the playoffs is probably the big picture goal. So I think overall those are the things to kind of think about, but we'll definitely have more updates soon.
Yeah, and I mean that plantar fasciitis stuff that never fully goes away. Like, it's always going to kind of be there. It's more of just like a pain tolerance thing. So it'll just be dependent on what he's feeling from game to game, if that has anything to do with that hasn't been mentioned so far this season, but it is the same foot where he had that issue last year. So we'll just have to see. But before we take off here, I do want to mention this. We talked about Dereck Lively and how good he's been, even though he's just 19 years old. He's only played 12 NBA games, but so far he's producing 1.35 points per possession, which is, for guys that are averaging at least 1.5 possessions, he's in the top 10 there. So that's pretty impressive. I mean, he's still got a long way to go. He's still got a lot to learn. He admits that. Everybody knows that. But, I mean, he is just off to a great start overall. And he's shooting, I believe, with last night's game, he's back up to 75% overall field goal percentage, if I'm not mistaken. I don't have that pulled up right now, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. Hold on. Let me click this real quick.
He is at 72.9%.
72.9, so not quite back up to where he where he was at earlier in the season. At one point, he was at 78%. But when you're early in the season, each game, you can bounce back and forth about 4 or 5% until you get later on in the year. But great stuff from Dereck Lively. The future is very bright for him and Luka specifically. And then when they get this thing rolling, and they have him and Luka and Kyrie, all of them healthy. Like I said, this team is going to be hard to beat unless they somehow come back in the playoffs and Adam Silver decides to bring those in-season tournament courts for the playoffs, and then the Mavs are getting swept in the first round. But as long as that doesn't happen, I feel like the odds are good that the Mavs are going to have a pretty good season. So we'll see how it goes. Grant, I appreciate you joining me to recap what we saw from Luka and Lively last night, as well as some of the stuff that happened in those New Orleans games. It was a lot of fun. It's kind of bittersweet for me because I always make it a point. I spend a little extra money for some really good seats down there because it only happens 2 times a year. But for the first time ever, they had them in back-to-back games. So it's like it was great. It was awesome to have a little mini series down there in New Orleans. But now it's over for the rest of the season, and it's not going to happen again until next year. So I'm looking at the schedule now and trying to plan some Dallas trips, and I might end up going to Memphis. They're a little bit longer drive for me, about 3 hours north instead of an hour and a half south going to New Orleans, but I'm going to see if I can make that work too. But y'all, I appreciate it. Be sure to go like, rate, and subscribe on all your favorite podcast platforms. Hit that subscribe button on YouTube. Give us a bunch of likes, comments, all that good stuff. And do the same for Grant over his channel, Grant Afseth. You can follow us both on Twitter at Dalton_Trigg, at Grant Afseth, and keep up with all the work we got going on at DallasBasketball.com. The Mavs are off until Saturday until they take on Giannis Antetokounmpo and the Milwaukee Bucks. So we're going to have a lot of stuff in between now and then on DallasBasketball.com. So be sure to check it out. We appreciate it. Y'all have a great rest of your week. Have a great weekend, and we will see you next week.